Second part of the fourth race of the 2005 Piston Cup season, leaving off with Ryan Newcar starting at pole position. He would lead for the first lap of the race before he'd lose it to Frank Oilman, who would lead on lap 15 before he'd lose the lead to Lightning McQueen. He would lead until lap 26 before he'd lose the lead to his teammate Lucas 95, who would lead all the way until lap 133 for over 100 laps, surprising everyone. He'd lose the lead, but Carl Edwards would have a 20-second lead on lap 118, and then the King would take the lead and lead to lap 155, where he'd lose the lead to Greg Beeple, who leads to lap 169 before he'd lose it to Carl Edwards, who would only lead for one lap before he'd lose it back to Carl Edwards, who would lead for 10 laps before losing it to me on lap 181, and I would lead to lap 201, but on that lap, I'd be bump drafted by Chick Hicks, who would then take the lead, only leading until lap 203 before he'd lose the lead to Mark Carton, who would only lead for the rest of lap 203 before losing it to Sage Vanderspit, who would lead only one lap before he'd lose it to the King, who would lead to lap 234 for barely 30 laps. But during the time, Nicky Carlson would say this, who does he say it to? Sage Vanderspin and Jeremy Carfield, who riding right alongside each other during lap 215, and they would both say this after hearing Nicky Carlson's quote. And Nicky Carlson would go for the lead on lap 215, but I ain't letting that slide. I say this to Nicky Carlson, and then I would wreck him on lap 215, but fortunately, Nicky Carlson would have a career-ending crash. And then one lap later, Chick Hicks would wreck 5 more cars. Luckily, they don't have career-ending crashes unlike Nicky. But this crash would also put these 3 cars, including Lightning McQueen, down a lap. Greg Beeple would take the lead from the King on lap 234 and lead for 40 laps, but during this time, Lightning McQueen and Ricky Slud would both get back onto the lead lap on lap 260, and then Frank Oilman would take the lead from Greg Beeple, lead to lap 292, I forgot to write the word lap there, but it's whatever. He'd lose the lead to Sonic EXE on lap 292, who'd lead for like 10 laps before he'd lose the lead to Mark Carton, who'd lead for 1 lap before he'd lose it to Chick Hicks, who would actually make a clean pass, but he'd lose it on lap 303 to Lightning McQueen, before he would lose it to Carl Edwards, who would lead for 10 laps. But during this time, Chick Hicks would wreck 2 more cars, being Chuck Armstrong and Billy Oilchanger. And Jimmy Speedcar would actually take the lead, leading for a few yards on lap 315, 100 laps after Nicky Carlson's career-ending crash, before he'd lose the lead to Lucas 95, who would lead all the way until lap 349. During this time, his teammate Sonic EXE would wreck Kurt Busch-Tire, who was still down 1 lap. And he says this after wrecking Kurt Busch-Tire. But Kurt Busch-Tire wasn't happy about that. Kurt Busch-Tire, do not say that word. And Ken Schrader would do the same to Eugene Kowarecki on lap 348. But 1 lap after that, Murray Clutchburn would take the lead and lead to lap 352 before lose the lead to Lightning McQueen, who would lead to lap 365 before lose the lead to Frank Oilman, who would lead all the way to lap 369 before he'd lose it to Hollingus, who would lead only 1 lap before he'd lose it to Greg Beeple, who would lead to lap 375, but on that lap, he'd lose the lead to Chick Hicks, who would lead all the way until lap 383, but Sonic EXE would bump Chick Hicks into the wall on that lap and take the lead. But, 10 laps later, Chick Hicks would get revenge and bump Sonic EXE into the wall, and then he would lead all the way to lap 399, but the King would pass him on the last lap and lead the final lap and win the 2005 Olympus 400, getting his first win of the season, putting Chick Hicks in 2nd place, where he belongs. Lightning McQueen would finish 3rd this race, ahead of Sonic EXE, who still finished 4th, despite the fact he got bumped into the wall by Chick. And his teammate, Lucas 95, would round out the top 5, getting the same position he did in the Ford 500. He'd finish out of Carl Edwards and Greg Beeple, the Rush Racing teammates. Would finish out of Dale Jr., finishing the same position as number 8. He'd finish ahead of me, finishing 9th this race, and rounding out the top 10 is Frank Oilman. And Jimmy Speedcar would be the last car to finish on the lead lap, finishing 40th this race. Same position as Ricky Slood, the last car to finish on the lead lap 2 races ago. Now, here are the rest of the results. Here's the top 15, which is rounded out by Rusty Wheelhouse. Greg Kinneman barely misses out on a top 10. And Norman Torque Wheelers and Gerald Leadfoot would finish 12th and 14th respectively in their first race of the season. In between them is Jeff Corvette, who would finish 13th, 1 position worse than the last race. And here are the rest of the results. Claude Scruggs would round out the top 20, despite the fact he didn't do anything this race. And here are the more results. Jeremy Carfield finished 25th, rounding out the top 25 out of Stage Vader Spin, who would get his very first finish this season, ahead of the Chip Cardassi Racing teammates of Casey Gears and Jamie McCarty, finishing 27th and 28th respectively. Their other teammate, Sterling Carlin, would round out the top 30, right behind Dale Carrett, and barely beating out Dave Laney. And rounding out the top 35 is Casey Corner, who finally finished a race, beating out Elliot Graffler, Brian Vickars, Matt Karzith, Ken Strader, and Jimmy Speedcar, who, as mentioned, was the last car to finish on the lead lap, finishing ahead of all of these cars, including Kurt Busch-Tire, who could not get back onto the lead lap by the time he was wrecked out by Sonic EXE. And here is the bottom 3. Unfortunately, Nicky Carlson will never race again after this race. Oh, about Nicky Carlson. Here is what I have to say about ending Nicky Carlson's career. And this is my quote. But I will still be docked 100 points for what I did to Nicky Carlson. And that will conclude the 4th race of the 2005 Piston Cup season. Next race, I believe, is the Nitro Wave 350 or 400. Not quite sure about the laps, but see you then.